Hi, I'm Joe Harris, President of the University of Oklahoma. I want to welcome you to our Conversations with the President. This platform gives me the chance to talk to some of the great people who make OU so special. Make sure you're subscribed to Conversations with the President, and you'll be the first to know when new episodes are released. Let's get started. All right, welcome to the show. This is Conversations with the President. Thrilled that you joined us. As you likely know, because I know you're an avid listener, we do a new segment called Hey Harris. We're going to delay it until the end of this podcast because I would like our special guest to have a chance to give his answers. Our special guest today is Akil Reed Amar, who is someone that is one of the great public intellectuals of our time, the preeminent constitutional scholar, and someone that I have known and watched for a long time. I had the opportunity to meet in 2012 when I was Dean of the College of Law, and greatly admire both professionally and personally. The accolades, as a law school dean, which I used to be, you always wanted to have an individual on your faculty who was a great scholar. And if everything went absolutely perfectly right, you might find someone who's a great scholar and a great teacher. And then if you could find someone that did service to the profession, that would be something you could hardly even ask for. Akil, Professor Amar, is the Triple Crown winner. He is the best at all three of those. We had a conversation back in 2012 that you have long forgotten, where we talked about that mix and how that really is what a great law school has. We are here on the eve of the 250th anniversary of America's founding. And obviously, the Constitution is the foundational document that's a part of it. It is so wonderful to have you here. We're going to have you for a dinner as well, which is why we were lucky enough to get you here. Just a few accomplishments for those that may not know everything about you, but you are the Sterling Professor at Yale Law School, both of law and political science at Yale. You have produced hundreds of law review articles. You have a number of books, including a new book that just came out, part of a trilogy on the Constitution that everyone must buy. You host your own podcast, which is a great play on words. America's Constitution, a play on your last name. You've been cited by the United States Supreme Court more than 50 times and more than anyone under the age of 70. So we're thrilled to have you here, thrilled to have you on campus, and just want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could just say one thing right back at you. I have, for so many years, admired the University of Oklahoma, and in particular, your programs on American history and the American Constitution. I think you all have the best undergraduate program in the country on these themes, and it's been, I think, an important kind of commitment that didn't happen over the last dozen years, and I've watched that unfold, and I commend you.
That is about as high a praise as you could ask for, and that will be whatever I do to mess up the rest of this podcast. That is incredibly meaningful, and it's something that started well before I took on this role. We have the Institute for the American Constitutional Heritage. We require every student to take one class, and it is American federal government. I have the opportunity to guest lecture in a lot of those classes, and to hear that from you is a profound compliment. So thank you. That's meaningful. There's so much to cover, and so much that I'd like to cover. You, I know, get an entire span of questions ranging from your newest book to the state of our democracy and the role the Constitution plays in that. One of the focuses of this podcast is what we have going on campus and what its role is in American society, a flagship public research university. When you think about what great public research universities do, and you think about your understanding, your articulation, your ability to understand and explain the Constitution, how do you think about our role relative to crafting the citizen leaders of tomorrow?
So I'm a public school kid from California, and my family has very much been associated with public education throughout. Now, I want the audience just to put to one side issues of football and basketball, just so you don't hate me, but I'm born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I grow up in the shadow of the University of California. My brother was the dean of the dean, just as you were the dean of the law school here. My brother Vic was the dean of the University of Illinois
I didn't know
College of
that.
Law.
Yeah.
So those are three absolutely great public university systems. We could talk about the
Without a doubt.
University of Virginia. We could talk about the University of Texas. And there are many others. But those three in particular are connected to my family. The UC system in California, the University of Michigan system where I was born, and the University of Illinois system where my brother was dean, and the books that I write are written for, at one end, Supreme Court justices and presidents and senators. Four of my students are senators of the United States. But at the other end, these very same books, I'm actually aiming for high school kids in AP History and AP Government, and college kids at great public and private universities, very much including this one. That when I close my eyes and imagine my target audience as I'm composing this paragraph or that chapter, that's what I'm aiming for, because the graduates of this school are going to be the next generation's senators and governors and presidents and judges and justices. And I want to get them started early. I'm trying to tell the story of the American Constitution. Not the story of me. Actually, I'm hoping when you read these books, you won't know my politics, but the story of us, the U.S., the United States, we, the people. And I don't think, frankly, that enough kids in this younger generation have been exposed to that. I do think that students here at the University of Oklahoma are being exposed to that, and that's why I began, as I did, saying I'm so grateful to you all for doing what you're doing, because if this generation doesn't know the story of us, of the American people, of the American Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and our 250 years as a nation, I don't know how we actually survive going forward, because we don't have, as Americans, in common, truthfully, all that much. We don't have race or national origin or religion or first language or partisan affiliation or even geography. It's a vast country. What we do have in common is that we're Americans, and we all have the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the story of America that unites us. And that's, I think, what you here are trying to teach undergraduates, and those are the books I'm trying to write. And our public universities have a particularly important role, I think, in that. I teach at a private university, but my family is very much public university oriented.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You just released in 2025 the second volume of this trilogy of books that tell the story of the American Constitution. The second one is Born Equal, and it traces the Constitution from 1840 to 1920. And obviously you are writing in process the third component of that. What do you think at its essence, to oversimplify it, what do you think the most important lesson of our Constitution is, and how does it relate to the continuation of our democracy?
So I might say two or three, right? Because you give me one, it's like, when you're with the genie and you get three wishes, I always want my third wish to be more wishes or something.
Right.
So volume one, the words that made us, the big idea is we became an indivisible people. We became a we. And I believe in indivisibility, so I think Lincoln was right. That's going to be connected to volume two, which is about the Civil War era. So one big idea is we are one indivisible continental people, and that's important because there was a war about that, and I'm on Mr. Lincoln's side. And Oklahoma was very complicated, actually,
right.
During that war. And we had to become a we because of the military geostrategic situation, because Britain had 6 times as many free people as America, and in Ben Franklin's phrase, Americans had to join or die. And join they did in the American Revolution, and then indivisibly in the Constitution, and they had to do that. But here's the problem. Americans actually at that moment really deeply disagreed about the biggest issue, really, frankly, which is slavery. And
Sure.
The North was increasingly abolitionist. The idea of ending slavery begins in America. The old world had slavery and had the idea of freeing slaves, but it didn't have the idea of ending slavery. That's an American idea. The world's first abolition society is formed in Philadelphia in 1775, and immediately after the Declaration of Independence, the North starts ending slavery, not freeing slaves, ending slavery. The Deep South doesn't. They had to join or die, so they actually, got together, but they didn't have, this deep bedrock commitment to human equality in common. And that's why we have a civil war. And then in the volume 2, so the big idea of The Words That Made Us is we became a we, but it was complicated. Big idea of the second volume, the first volume is 1760 to 1840. Second volume is 1840 to 1920, is now human equality. Birth equality is going to become the cornerstone of the project. It couldn't have been in 1776, yet it says all men are created equal, but people are interpreting that very different ways. But in this next 80-year period, America commits itself to an increasingly deep and wide just utterly transformative, revolutionary, inspiring idea of birth equality, that people should not be exalted or demeaned because of the accidents of their birth, because they were born with light skin as opposed to dark skin, or born male versus female, or Jew or Gentile, in wedlock or out of wedlock, born first in their family, I'm firstborn, or later in their family, my kid brothers, born, I would say, to citizen parents or born to non-citizen parents. It doesn't matter. In America, we're born equal. The 13th Amendment says we're born equally free. No one's born a slave. No one's born a slave master. The 14th Amendment says people born under the American flag are born equal citizens, black or white, male or female, to citizen parents or non-citizen parents. The 15th Amendment says you're born equal for voting rights and other political rights, whether you're born black or white. And the 19th Amendment is going to say, at the end of this new book, it's 1840, 1920, you're born equal for voting rights, whether you're born male or female.
That's a big idea of Volume 2. So indivisibility, Volume 1, for geostrategic reasons, and second volume is birth equality. If I could say one other thing, the American project is far more democratic than lots of people talk. We put the thing to a vote. Up and down the continent. In 1787, 89, more people got to vote, and everybody allowed to go to anything in human history. So more democratic than you thought, more about geography than you thought. Indivisibility was connected to defensible borders. Initially, more pro-slavery than you thought, but now, today, more anti-slavery, perhaps than you imagined, and that's the project.
It's amazing. What do you see in Volume 3?
Volume 3 is tentatively entitled Earth's Best Hope. It's the American
constitutional story from 1920 to the present day, and the title phrase borrows from my hero Abe Lincoln, who says at one point, "We shall nobly win or meanly lose the last best hope of earth." And it tries to argue that for all its flaws, America is the indispensable nation in the world, the most important nation in the world, the best hope for liberty and equality in the world. And here's why. Because we, Americans, bring together the great-grandchildren of all the other peoples of the world. You and I, right here, your ancestors came from the Middle East, mine came from South Asia. Other Americans, their ancestors came from Europe or South America or East Asia, or Africa. That's not true of most of the other great democracies in the world. It's not true of France or Germany, not true of Norway or Switzerland, of India, that they bring together the great-grandchildren of all the other peoples. And it's a harder project because we don't, to repeat, have race or national origin or religion or even first language in common. So Earth's Best Hope talks about how America becomes increasingly global with immigration. I'm not sure, we've talked about this, but in 1965, Lyndon Johnson signs an immigration reform bill that allows all sorts of people from around the world to come here. We haven't talked about when your family came. A lot of people in my family came after 1965. I was lucky enough to be born before that, but most of our relatives came after 1965. So America becomes increasingly global. We are the world. And the world becomes increasingly American in that many other countries in the world start to adopt a democratic way of life, emulating the project that Americans really began. In 1787, there are very few democracies on the planet, and none as participatory as America's. Today, lots more democracies. They're under stress. So is democracy in America itself. But the big themes of Volume 3 are America becoming more global and the world becoming more American. And actually, truthfully, a bunch of Asian wars, endless Asian wars that create all sorts of tensions in America. A Korean war, a Vietnamese war, an Iraqi war, an Afghanistan war. So the theme of global wars is also a huge part of Volume 3.
Thank you for the gift. I mean, really, these 2, soon to be 3 volumes are a gift that we have to have because we the people are just that. It's us that have to do it. And I'm constantly thinking about the reality that every generation has these moments where we decide.
Right.
And that's the reason that we're the oldest continuous democracy in the world and not very old, is that it's a very difficult experiment. And to me, having minds like yours, that one of the great thing about public intellectuals that have taken the time to do a studied inquiry is that you can provide context that we need, because in the moment everything seems so exigent, so existential, so of the moment, and determinative. As you think about your study of our Constitution and the arc of it, and you think about, can you help contextualize this moment we're in right now? You hear, as we've heard, in many times throughout American history, but through your specific lens, which has a very broad aperture, how do you think about this moment we're at right now? And is it critical? Are we at a critical moment in our nation's history and constitutional stability and its ability to act as that thing that brings us all together? And is it unique?
I think we're almost always at a critical moment of some sort, because you put it very well. We're always at most one generation away from barbarism. We have to, every generation, replenish this understanding of the American project. And it has to be widespread. You see, if I watch The Crown, and in fact, the Netflix series, it's actually.
If I were you, I would watch West Wing, because certainly you get royalties from that. But yes, you watch the Queen or the Crown.
And it's not a strong monarchy; it's a constitutional monarchy. But in strong monarchies, a small group of people run the society, and ordinary people don't need to actually understand what it's all about. They don't need to understand the deep history, because they're not asked every 4 years to pick a supreme leader. But we are, and unless every generation understands, for example, who our presidents have been — I'm going to be talking about the presidency here at the university — but unless they understand who our presidents have been and have their own views, every citizen can have her or his own views about who was good and who was bad. How are you going to pick the next one? And that's where, right back at you, I am trying to provide context and content. I'm trying to write books for my fellow Americans about the project thus far, because they need to know it in order to discharge their responsibilities as citizens. They do. Okay? And so I'm trying to provide content, but I need University of Oklahoma and others to provide the readers. I need you all to encourage your students to read these big, long, boring books about what happened a long time ago when, and they might wonder, well, how does that relate to what's happening right now? And the temptation at every moment is to pay attention just to the news, what's happening now. But you and I both believe that you can't really fully understand the news unless you understand the olds, unless you understand where we came from, the deep background of this controversy or that one. I've already told you a little bit about, actually, I believe in indivisibility, and it's about borders and therefore defensible borders. Oh, and you can't understand the debate about the Rio Grande or Canada as a 51st state or Greenland or the Panama Canal unless you understand the deep background of all of this. You can't understand a debate about a recent Supreme Court case about voting rights unless you understand the Constitution originally didn't say right to vote because of slavery. In the period of this new book, it starts to add the words the right to vote. It's in the 14th Amendment, Section 2, and the 15th Amendment, and the 19th Amendment, and in Volume 3, it's going to be added 2 more times to the Constitution, in the 24th and 26th Amendments. You can't understand the debate about the right to vote, this month, this Supreme Court term, without the deep background. Here's just, you also asked me, can I say anything about just the general arc of 250 years? I would say, over 250 years, the American Constitution has actually gotten better. More liberty, more equality. Very few amendments have been bad amendments. Some people think prohibition was a mistake, but we did get rid of it pretty quickly thereafter. The amendments have added to liberty and equality. They've made amends for some of the mistakes and lapses and sins and flaws of earlier generations. And once you understand that, which you won't if you're just looking at the news every day. Once you see that arc of history, you might, I hope, be challenged and inspired to see if you and your generation could carry on that project by improving the Constitution as you would understand what improvement would be, because you would have some examples of earlier Americans who did just that. Let me just take, the heroes of the most recent book. There are 4, and I'm on a first-name basis with them, and one is Abe Lincoln, and he has less than a year's education in his whole life. We're not talking about university education, we're talking about classroom education. He's born into dirt, no fame, no family, no fortune, and oh my God, look at what he accomplishes. Let's take Frederick Douglass. If it's possible to imagine, it is, and it's true, he's born even lower than Abe. He's born a slave. He doesn't ever even know his birthday, ever. I mean, people know the days on which their pets are born. He never knows that. He doesn't know who his father is. He teaches himself how to read and write and think, and he's astonishing. And you will read his story, and you'll read about how he and Abe worked together in various ways, and you'll read about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Harriet Beecher Stowe, and they're born female at a time when it's not an advantage to be born female, and you'll read about these amazing people. Harriet Beecher Stowe sells more copies of her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, than any other book of the century, more than Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer, Scarlet Letter, Moby Dick. She changes how Americans think about slavery, and she's writing as a woman, as a mother, about women and mothers. Elizabeth Cady Stanton gets 400,000 people to sign an anti-slavery petition and is crusading for women's suffrage, for her basically entire adult life. And by the end of the book, she actually succeeds posthumously. But the book ends, 1920, with the last living woman from Seneca Falls. She was 17 years old in 1848, Seneca Falls, which advocated women's suffrage. And this one woman, she was 17 years old in 1848, and now it's 1920. She's in her 90s, I believe, and she's watching in 1920 women vote equally across America because of the 19th Amendment. So the arc of history has been an arc of increasing inclusion and equality, in which lots of people have participated and left the Constitution stronger than it was when they were born.
Isn't it stunning? It's a continual battle, and this idea of civics education, the ability to understand the past and the obligation to the present so that the future may have what we inherited is truly the essence of what allows America to be propagated, which I think too few of us take for granted. And it cannot be taken for granted because it's not guaranteed.
And I just want to make sure that our audience understands I'm hoping not to be partisan. Let's just take our last two-term presidents. So Barack Obama channels an important part of the story, liberty and equality. He's very Lincolnian in certain ways, a tall, skinny constitutional lawyer from Illinois, and he understands certain themes. Let's take Donald Trump. He channels Andrew Jackson in certain ways. He understands the importance of actually borders and national security. And they're both part of the American project. You and I offline were talking about Toby Keith. We had both
Right.
have, you knew him, and I had a great admiration for him. I was showing you that 3 of my songs on my playlist of my 150 songs
That's right.
are Toby Keith songs, one of which is courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. So Red America needs to understand Blue America better. And Blue America needs to understand Red America better. And I hope if you read these books, you will see that I'm trying to tell a story in which I'll show you the roots of both of these traditions. They're both part of the US of A. And that's what I think, truthfully, you do particularly well at the University of Oklahoma.
Well, you are a treasure, and it's been 13 years since I last had a chance to sit down with you and listen to you, but you have only become more interesting, and I'm beyond grateful for that. But since you and I both spent the largest part by far our entire professional careers around students, because we've had that blessing in our lives, I need your help with what is usually the first part of this podcast to bring us to a conclusion. And there are individuals, usually students, submit questions, and it's not as clever as the name of your podcast.
Okay.
It's not America, but it is Hey Harris.
Hey, Harris.
All right, our first question comes from Hiram, an OU student, who asks, when it comes to defining what the true university experience is like, what would you wish students did more often when it comes to achieving a true university experience? This is the most hypocritical answer, but also most accurate answer I can give, which is to relax. Which if you had told me this when I was a college student, I would have brushed you off. But I spent too much time. When you think about, to me, the true college experience, it is growing intellectually, it is growing socially, emotionally, being exposed to new things. And that means you cannot be one-dimensional. And so to me, it is allowing yourself to experience all of it and just not part of it. What are your thoughts, Akil?
I'll do 2 things. One, just to your point, here's what I wish I had done more of as an undergraduate. Spent more time in the art gallery, where I just learned tons. And you have an amazing natural history museum here, so you can learn a lot of stuff outside the classroom. I wrote my Yale Law School admissions essay on my residential college dining hall and how I thought I learned more there than even in the classrooms or libraries. So dining halls, yes. Art galleries, yes. Museums, yes. But then the nerd in me, to be honest, and so this is less hypocritical, is I want you to read books.
Yeah.
And to ideally take classes with professors who are assigning books. If you're really lucky, a professor assigns their own books, and then talking about those books with the author, with the professor, and with your fellow students.
Yeah, I love it. And just because you indicated that you wrote your law school essay to Yale and were successful, I've got to vent and maybe engage in a bit of a therapy session. But I sent my application to Yale Law School, and this is well before FedEx and Fred Brown was around. I got a rejection letter within a matter of a day or two, which is not possible. To this day, it isn't that I was rejected, it's the speed with which I was rejected. I don't hold you responsible. This obviously was well before you, but it's still painful and I'm still dealing with it.
I had some of those experiences in my early dating life before I met my beloved spouse.
Yeah, so you understand. Yeah, and Yale didn't even say it's not you, it's us. They said it's just not you. All right, the second question, I'm going to tailor it so we can both answer.
But at least they didn't laugh in your face.
It felt like it.
Okay.
Yeah, it came back
Okay.
really quickly.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean literally laugh in your face when you...
No,
you know.
no.
Okay.
Unlike, no, I
Yes,
hear you.
yes.
But I also experienced a lot of that. Although a lot of it's still suppressed, so who knows how much actually happened. All right, this next one is from Lewis, an OU student, and this is what they write, and I want you to tailor it to Yale. And I think this is interesting, given the fact that Yale is, most folks might know about it, a fairly decent school in New Haven. And then we have a public research university also in OU. So the question is this: where do you see your university in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are some ideas that you haven't had the chance to share or have heard adequately?
So what I would hope for with my university, which has a new president, is that we'd redouble our commitments to intellectual diversity and to robust conversation across the political aisle. I love Yale. I arrived at Yale College on my 18th birthday. I was a public school kid. No one from my high school had ever gone to Yale in recent memory. I stayed there. So I've been there basically since the fall of 1976, so half a century. So I love the place. But I think we need to do a better job of intellectual diversity. And that's one of the things, candidly, that I think you do well here and that we could learn from you.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. In the role that I have, having been a law school dean and now university president, I've tried to pour the best ideas I have into the community to develop our strategic plan. And it's been this wonderful opportunity, not just to posit my ideas, but to hear what the response is to that and then construct a strategic plan that I think matters. I think at the heart of that is what is, I think, a unique flagship public mission, which is to achieve academic excellence, which I think is best signified by AAU membership. There's 37 publics, and I'd love for us to be one of those in the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully closer to 5, to continue to allow the American dream to prosper by being accessible and affordable, and to create these experiences, as you've indicated, where people feel as though they belong as part of a community of people that have a range of ideas. So yeah, I think that in some ways they're similar, this idea of intellectual diversity, but also sharing a common humanity. And that is what, from my chair, I think the most about, which is this idea of how do we create the we, how do we create the indivisible, it being indivisible. And I think a part of that is when we understand people not like ourselves, and we don't reject them as being not a part of our tribe.
And thanks for that shout out for about affordability. One of the things that I'm proud of is that Yale has become increasingly affordable with full ride scholarships to an increasingly broad segment of our student body. And when I went to Yale, there were scholarships, but not for kids from around the world, only for American kids. And now, actually, we have scholarships for kids from all around the world, and we have more scholarships than ever before, more need-based scholarships. And thanks for that. Of course, public universities, that's their essence, is affordability and inclusiveness. I think Yale has done a good job. Not every private university has all the resources that Yale does to have that commitment. But yes, thank you for that shout out.
And I think to end with the Toby Keith reference, that's what makes the red, white, and blue. So thank you all for joining Conversations with the President. Huge thanks to Professor Akil Reed Amar. It's a treasure to have you, and hope we see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for joining this episode of Conversations with the President. And before you go, do not forget, we need your input for Hey Harris. Please go to link.ou.edu/Hey Harris to submit your questions. Thanks a lot. Until next time, this is Conversations with the President.